Okay, this video is for getting quotes for electrical components here in the electrical room at Bayboro Tower, which is 51 years old since it was built in 1974. And the reason we're doing this is because Florida SB4D, after the Surfside disaster in Miami, required us to get an engineering company called Beryl in our case to evaluate things that, well, as far as electrical goes, that are over 50 years old and need to be replaced. So, okay, you can just kind of see an overview of what's going on here. Let's talk quickly before we get into Beryl Engineering's report. I'll just say what I think it means, even though the wording in it is confusing. So here are the things I think are 50 years old and we need to replace. So you'll notice we have two banks of meters, but those were replaced fairly recently by Duke Energy with digital ones, so those don't. And by the way, we have 39 units, so it's roughly 20 and 20 for these two banks. And you'll notice at the bottom of each of these sort of column of meters, we have these switches, circuit breakers. This stuff looks like it's 1974. So I think even though the meters don't need replacing, I think all of these switches, all of these circuit breaker boxes for each row of 4 meters or column of 4 meters here needs replacing. So we've got, I'll take still shots of this, but basically we have 4 of these on each side. On this side they're on top for a total of 8. And then also notice we have on each side these vintage, also made by Zinsco, I guess, main switches for each of these two banks. So those are going to need to be replaced, I think. And then we have this thing, I guess that's where the main power comes in. Maybe it's got one gigantic switch in there, I don't know. I think that is it for what actually needs to be replaced. Now, when we look at the Beryl report, we're going to see mention of a main panel needing to be replaced. To me, this would be the main panel, but the building was remodeled in 2006, and there's actually a sticker on here saying this panel is from 2006, so I don't think it needs replacing. All right, well, you can stop if you don't want to know why we're doing this. Otherwise, keep watching. So this is the, there are 2 things involved in SB4D compliance. So you have to get a engineering company, Beryl, as I mentioned, to create a report. And so this section of the report having to do with the electrical room, so they call this common area meter and panel. At this point, they aren't really saying what needs to be replaced. They call these things the electrical main shutoffs, and then they call these things the unit meter banks, and that's it, because we don't care about the fire alarm for purposes of this discussion. So let's go on to the second part of what Beryl does, which is to create a structural integrity reserves report, which basically tells us, at what rate we need to fund these items. And so if you look at items or lines 10 and 11 here, notice the confusing wording. It says electrical panels main and electrical panel subs are things that we need to replace. Supposedly the report was done in 2023, so at that time they said 1 year left. Well, that would have been 2024, which was 50 years after 1974, and now we're in 2025. So you would think that lines 10 and 11, the electrical panels main and subs, need to be replaced, but that description sounds wrong. I think it's the items that we just discussed. So these sub panel breaker boxes here, and the ones up there, and this gigantic thing, and these 2 switches. So I think that's really all that you need to know, except that we have a meeting with Beryl to sort of, I guess you would call it, discuss or contest and that is going to be the 7th of March on Friday. So by then, we really need to have an electrician tell us what actually needs to be replaced because it's 50 years old and give us a quote. And also, we need any documentation explaining why things may not need to be replaced that Beryl thinks do, because part of the purpose of this meeting is to get an extension if needed on any such items. Okay, thanks for watching.